She gave her first time to a millionaire, and he gave her a proposal she never expected. The morning sun streamed through the glass exterior of Carlyle & Co., the most prestigious fashion tech empire in New York. Sunlight bounced off the steel frames, illuminating the entire high-rise with a cold, calculated brilliance. Much like Damon Carlyle himself, the 31-year-old CEO, standing motionless by the floor-to-ceiling window of his top-floor office. He watched the city awaken below, but his gaze lacked warmth. Success had never been an issue for Damon. He had it all: intellect, influence, an obscene inheritance, and a flawless public persona. Yet behind the designer suit was a man exhausted by expectation. Today's schedule lay on his desk, segmented into strict 15-minute blocks. Investor briefings, campaign approvals, executive strategy meetings. Every entry felt like déjà vu. He exhaled slowly. "Mr. Carlyle, the boardroom is ready," his assistant's voice echoed through the intercom. Adjusting his tie, Damon exited via his private elevator, a sanctuary of mahogany and brushed steel, as cold and controlled as the image he'd spent years cultivating. When the elevator stopped at the 42nd floor, styling division, the doors opened just as a human whirlwind crashed into him. A flurry of designer garments exploded around them like a fabric storm. A young woman nearly toppled into his arms, eyes wide with panic. "Oh my God, I'm so fired," she whispered. Her skin was a warm bronze tone, her hazel green eyes bright with alarm, and her braided hair shimmered with subtle silver. For a brief moment, Damon forgot where he was. "I am so sorry, Mr. Carlyle," she gasped, cheeks flushing. The other elevator broke down. "I need to deliver these looks to the shoot on 50. I know I'm not supposed to use this one, but—" "Breathe," Damon interrupted, the corners of his mouth lifting for the first time in weeks. She blinked. He helped her to her feet, bending to collect the scattered clothes. Expensive pieces from elite brands lay in disarray, but what caught Damon's attention wasn't the chaos. It was the honest panic in her expression. "What's your name?" "Lena Monroe. I'm a stylist. Well, assistant stylist." She swallowed. "Well, Lena Monroe, you just accomplished something no one's managed in 3 years." "What's that?" "You got my attention." As the elevator resumed its ascent, Damon felt something unexpected stir in his chest. For the first time in a long while, his heart reacted. Lena never imagined she'd be summoned to the 60th floor, the CEO's office, especially not after colliding with the man himself that very morning. When Damon's assistant reached out, she genuinely thought it was a mistake, or a prank. But it wasn't. That afternoon, she entered a glass-walled office with a skyline view so vast it made her feel like she was walking into a dream. The room was silent enough to hear her own heartbeat. Damon Carlyle sat behind a sleek ebony desk, flipping through a stack of lookbook photos from a recent fitting. "Sit," he said without looking up. Lena lowered herself into the chair, steadying her breath. She wasn't sure if she felt nervous, terrified, or intrigued. "These are your styling selections for next month's magazine shoot?" Damon handed her a file of curated looks. "Yes, I led the coordination for this round," she replied, voice soft but clear. "I thought we could go for a fusion between techwear and vintage textures, cashmere layered with modern metallics. It portrays the CEO of the future, but keeps him approachable." He looked up. For a moment, the usual frost in Damon's eyes thawed slightly. "CEO of the future, but still approachable?" he repeated, a faint smirk forming. "Because I think your image is too perfect, too distant," Lena said. "The public doesn't see the person behind it. They see a symbol. But symbols don't stir emotion. People do." Damon paused. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was thoughtful. "Do you always speak this directly to your superiors?" he asked, tone unreadable. "No, Lena replied, pulse pounding. Only when I believe they're losing themselves. A soft laugh escaped Damon. Quiet, almost surprised. For the first time, Lena saw him not as a mogul, but as a man. All right, Monroe, I want you to lead the full concept for this campaign. No middleman, he said, rising to circle the desk. And I want your perspective, not just the market trend. Really? She blinked. Really? Damon nodded. I don't let people who make me laugh twice in 1 week walk away easily. She laughed, eyes meeting his in a flash of something unspoken. I won't let you down, Lena said, firm. And stop calling me Mr. Carlyle, he added. Then what should I call you? Damon. The meeting was short, but it left an impression that lingered well beyond closing words. As Lena exited, she sensed something shifting. Within her career, yes, but also somewhere deeper. And Damon? Damon stood silently by the window, hands in his pockets, replaying her words, her gaze. For the first time in years, he looked forward to the next meeting, not for the strategy, but for her. Lena had just reached the door when Damon's voice called out behind her. Calm, deliberate. Are you busy tonight? She turned, a little caught off guard. Tonight? He nodded, stepping a bit closer, close enough for her to see that his gaze had shifted. It wasn't the calculating look of a CEO making decisions. It was something quieter, something conflicted. I think we should continue the conversation. About image, style. I want to understand better how you see me, or how the world sees me through your eyes. Of course, Lena replied, trying to keep her voice even. In terms of brand identity, he smirked. If that's how you'd like to frame it. A pause followed, not awkward, just quiet. There's a small cafe tucked behind the Whitney Museum, he said. I go there when I need to escape the boardroom. 7? Lena hesitated for just a beat, then nodded. Okay. And don't bring a mood board, Damon added, his tone softer than before. Just bring yourself. Lena stepped out of the office with a quiet smile tugging at her lips. And Damon, for the first time in years, found himself actually looking forward to an evening, with no meetings, no projections, just a conversation. With her. Lena didn't know what tonight would bring. All she knew was that for the first time in years, a work-related meeting was making her heart race. And somewhere across the city, Damon Carlyle was getting ready too. Not for a briefing, but for an encounter he couldn't quite name either. Instead of the cafe they had discussed, Damon sent Lena a different address, a weathered red brick building tucked away in a redeveloped industrial zone near the river. She hesitated before ringing the bell. But when the door opened, she quickly realized this wasn't an office or a dinner spot. It was a wide open space, bathed in warm golden light, the scent of oil paint lingering in the air, and soft jazz playing from an old speaker in the corner. This is my private studio, Damon said, hands in his pockets. No one knows about it. Well, now you do. Lena scanned the room. Abstract paintings lined the walls. Some were bold and chaotic, others muted in silvery grays. In the corner sat an easel, a palette, and, surprisingly, a piano. You painted these? She asked, almost in disbelief. Yeah. Damon walked toward an unfinished canvas. It's how I keep myself from falling apart. She didn't speak. She studied each stroke. These weren't the works of someone controlled or calculated. They were raw, torn, lonely. No one thinks a CEO has cracks, she whispered. Because they're not supposed to see them, he replied. They stood in silence for a beat. Then he gestured toward the palette, voice soft. Want to try? She laughed gently. I've never painted. Then tonight's your first. He handed her a fresh board. Together they faced a blank canvas. Lena dipped her brush in red and yellow, creating a hesitant stroke. Damon stepped closer, adjusting her hand, their fingers brushing. The room grew still. When Lena turned, he was already looking at her, not with analysis or calculation, but with something deeper, something tired, something open. For once, he wasn't a CEO. He was just a man, standing beside her, hoping to be understood. "Lena," he said her name, nothing more. She answered with her eyes. Damon leaned in, slowly at first, almost uncertain. But when their lips met, the world hushed. There was no sound but heartbeats and breath, no presence but them. No company, no headlines, no pressure, only this moment. Their first kiss wasn't rushed or reckless. It was deliberate, earned, a product of silences, of glances, of unspoken longing. And when Damon pulled her closer, Lena didn't pull away. The painting on the easel remained unfinished, but in that quiet space, two unfinished souls began to find each other. Their relationship began as a fine thread, delicate, cautious, but gradually binding them closer with every passing moment. By day, Lena remained the assistant stylist, composed, punctual, professional. She addressed Damon as Mr. Carlyle in meetings, never letting her eyes linger more than necessary. Damon, in return, never spared her more than a passing glance in public. Everything was exactly as it should be, on paper. But at night, the world shifted. Quick cuts. Lena entering the studio with her hair in a bun, holding a bag of takeout. Damon standing at the easel, turning around with that rare softness in his eyes. Another night. They rolled out canvas across the floor, painting with their hands, laughing like kids when smears of color ended up on their faces. And another? Lena curled up asleep on the studio couch, wrapped in Damon's white dress shirt. He draped a blanket gently over her, then sat at the piano, letting a few soft notes drift into her dreams. Sometimes they escaped to a tiny Mexican diner in a Latin neighborhood where the lighting was dim and no one cared to notice that Damon Carlyle was holding hands with a girl who didn't belong to his world. Each moment was quiet, unpolished, unplanned, but deeply felt. Together they lived another life, one that belonged only to them. Lena began leaving small things behind at the studio. A lipstick, her sketch journal, a gray hoodie slung over a chair. Eventually, she spent more nights there than at her own place. Neither of them said the word love, but it lived in everything, in the way she fixed his collar before an interview, in how he always hung up calls the moment she spoke, in the stolen kisses between brushstrokes on canvas. It wasn't public, but it was real. One night, after finishing a massive painting, chaotic, streaked with deep reds and elongated lines that looked like breath held too long, Damon leaned against the wall, watching her. "Are you scared?" he asked quietly. "Of what?" Lena turned to him, her hair tousled, a smear of yellow paint on her cheek. "This?" he said, gesturing around them. "Us?" She paused, then walked over and sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "No," she whispered. "I'm only scared that one day I won't be here anymore." He didn't answer. He just held her hand tighter in the dark. Outside, the world spun at its relentless pace. But behind that worn wooden door, they had carved out a place where love could breathe, even if only in the shadows. Their love grew quietly, like a small flame cradled between cupped hands, fragile yet warmer than anything either had known. But no flame burns forever without the wind testing it. And the first gust came from someone closest to Damon. Vivian Carlyle returned to New York after 4 months of reflection at her lakeside estate in Switzerland, a place she claimed was the only setting quiet enough for real thinking. No press, no staff, not even Damon knew she was back. Her return was silent, but it was never idle. Within days, she had gathered enough to isolate the factor behind her son's sudden change. "Lena Monroe," she said for the first time during a private meeting with HR. Her voice didn't rise. It never had to, but it was cold, as if naming a virus infecting her corporation. Vivian distrusted women without pedigree. In her world, no background meant no elite education, no prestigious lineage, no place at the table. Lena, with her modest roots and assistant stylist title, fit none of the acceptable boxes. A girl like that can distract, cause scandal, bring attention we can't control. And that is something a CEO like Damon cannot afford, she told the PR crisis team. Soon, a wave of subtle media hits began surfacing across fashion blogs and tabloid sites. Who is the mystery woman spotted with Damon Carlyle after dark? Stylist assistant or CEO's secret flame, blurred lines at Carlyle & Co. Inside sources say she's aiming higher than her role. Lena's name wasn't printed, but the blurry cropped photos left little doubt. Within industry circles, everyone knew. Internally, hushed meetings began happening without Damon. Some board members started asking questions. Was Damon letting emotion cloud his leadership? Was he still the man they invested in? A governance review meeting was called, framed as a routine audit, but centered on personal affiliations affecting brand image. Lena wasn't named, but she could feel the walls closing in. She was quietly removed from a campaign Damon had personally assigned her to lead. No warning, just a bland email from management, realigning team responsibilities to align with evolving messaging goals. The styling floor grew colder. Conversations stopped when she entered. Her name started to carry weight, but not the kind she'd earned. Even a standard pitch she submitted to Harper's Weekly was returned with a curt note. We do not collaborate with staff under internal image review. She wasn't a stylist anymore. She was a PR liability. Damon saw it happening. He saw the light fade from her face in meetings, the quiet creeping into her laugh. But whenever he asked, she said only, "I'm fine." He knew it was a lie, and he knew exactly who was pulling the strings. Vivienne never needed to shout. She only had to adjust the board, pull a few levers, and the world would begin to question the woman Damon loved. Until she questioned herself. Silently, Vivienne sipped red wine from the glass-walled top floor, watching the city sparkle beneath her. Lena Monroe isn't the problem, she whispered, but Damon's weakness around her is unforgivable. Lena was invited to a quiet meeting at an upscale cafe near Central Park on a cold Wednesday afternoon. When she arrived, the person waiting wasn't a friend, a colleague, or even Damon. It was Vivian Carlyle. No assistant, no guards. Just two women, one young and worn out, the other powerful and pristine, smiling like a blade wrapped in velvet. "Sit," Vivian gestured, stirring her mint tea with perfect poise. Lena obeyed, her heart pounding. "I thought I understood my son," Vivian began, until he started changing, softer, slower, and then I discovered why. From her purse, Vivian pulled a slim envelope and placed it on the table. She didn't need to say more. Lena opened it. Inside, photos, Damon with another woman, at a hotel in Paris. The images were grainy but unmistakable. Room receipts, a printed message thread, flirty, intimate, ending with, "Can't wait to see you again. D." "That's what happens when you're not around," Vivian said gently. "And if you think my son is the monogamous type, you're daydreaming." Lena's hands trembled. She couldn't speak. She didn't trust herself to. "I don't hate you, Lena," Vivian continued, "but I won't let you drag Damon into chaos. You want love. He needs a legacy. And those two can't coexist." Lena didn't remember how she left the cafe, only that the city lights that evening felt dimmer, like her own thoughts. She packed in silence, her clothes, her sketches, the scent of his shirt still clinging to her fingertips. One hand trembled as it rested over her stomach. For the first time, she let the truth settle in. She was carrying his child. And yet, she would walk away, not because she stopped loving him, but because love, this time, wasn't enough to stay. Damon's child. But she couldn't bring it to a man who had betrayed her. Even if her heart still refused to fully believe it, her mind wouldn't allow weakness. She left that night. No text, no explanation, just a short letter. I don't belong in your world. Thank you for everything. Lena. Damon returned to the studio at 2 a.m. Lena wasn't there. He thought maybe she'd stayed at her apartment, but the next day, no sign of her, no message, no email, no contact. A few days later, he visited her place. Empty, cleared out, like she'd never existed. He called. No answer. Emailed. Silence. Panic crept in. He searched the company system. No activity, no updates, no trace of Lena Monroe. Anywhere. She had disappeared. Completely. He stood alone in the studio. Her scent still lingered in the air, faint but haunting. On the table, between abandoned sketches, lay her silver necklace, the one she wore every day. He picked it up, his hands shaking. For the first time in years. Damon Carlyle didn't know what to do. No plan, no control, no answers. Only one truth remained. She had taken his heart with her when she left. Damon sat alone in the studio, surrounded by the soft yellow glow of the desk lamp and a silence that felt suffocating. Everything was still there. The half-used palette, the couch where she used to fall asleep, the stained drop cloth streaked with burnt orange. Everything except Lena. He'd reread every text, replayed every call. There was no anger, no warning, just an absence, swift and total, as if she had never existed. Why? He couldn't understand. Not when just days ago she had laid beside him, laughing as he accidentally painted her hand, whispering new styling ideas between kisses. Nothing had hinted at this fall. He went to her old apartment, locked, empty. The security guard shrugged. She left in the middle of the night. No note, no forwarding info. Day after day, Damon waited for a sign, a word, a reason, but all he got was silence. No one had ever walked away from Damon Carlyle without an explanation. No one had ever dared, until Lena. And somehow that hurt more than any goodbye ever could. It was a quiet Friday afternoon when Damon heard a knock on his office door. Standing there was Chris, a senior IT technician. Young, quiet, methodical. He placed a small hard drive on Damon's desk, looking uneasy. "I'm sorry, I can't stay silent anymore." Damon nodded slowly. "This started with a private security request your mother sent 3 weeks ago," Chris said. "She asked us to generate simulated assets to help with media management." Chris opened his laptop and brought up folders labeled Paris Setup, Email Forged, Monroe She's Target. And as the first forged image flickered onto the screen, Damon's breath caught in his throat. Not from disbelief, but from the sudden, shattering realization. He hadn't lost her. He'd been made to lose her. Photos, doctored, emails, fabricated from an internal masked account. The hotel footage, spliced CCTV from an unrelated guest. Damon stood, gripping the back of his chair. "She left me because of this?" he said, voice breaking. Chris nodded. "I don't think she ever knew the truth, and you didn't know who orchestrated it until now." That evening, Damon called an emergency board meeting. Within 30 minutes, he laid everything bare. Code traces, metadata, manipulated documents, all executed under direct instruction from Vivian Carlyle. There was no need for further discussion. He ended with one sentence. "No one, not even my own mother, gets to destroy my life in the name of what she thinks is best." Vivian was removed from her executive role that same night. She left without protest, but her eyes never lowered. Later that night, Damon returned to the studio, his and Lena's old world. He opened a drawer and thumbed through the sketches she'd left behind. In a soft leather notebook, he found a folded document, a medical slip. His heart stopped. Pregnancy confirmation, 8 weeks. Triplets. Patient name, Lena Monroe. Date, 2 days before she disappeared. He couldn't breathe. She was pregnant. She was carrying his children, and she endured the smear, the betrayal, the abandonment. Alone, and he hadn't been there. Damon stepped out onto the balcony, eyes burning. He didn't know who he hated more, his mother, fate, or himself. But one thing rang clear. He had to find her. Find them. Wherever she was in the world, whether she still loved him or not, whether it was too late, he had to find Lena Monroe, and the 2 lives he'd never known he'd already lost. The call came in at 3 a.m. Damon jolted up from the couch in the studio, his eyes still burning from a sleepless night. He heard the nurse's voice on the phone, urgent, breathless. "Are you a next of kin for patient Lena Monroe? She's in critical condition. We need an immediate guardian signature. She's pregnant with triplets and showing signs of severe preeclampsia." Damon's heart stopped. "I'm on my way. Hold her, please. Hold her." Outside, a storm was raging. Snow and wind slammed against skyscrapers. The freeway was paralyzed due to a multi-car crash. Damon didn't hesitate. He activated the emergency medical flight system, an elite privilege reserved for the highest-tier CEOs. Within 15 minutes, he was in the air, cutting through ice and wind, racing toward the hospital. Inside the cramped chopper, Damon gripped the seat rail, knuckles white. In his mind, only one image remained. Lena, alone on an operating table, carrying 3 tiny lives inside her. And no one by her side. He had once lost her to silence. He wasn't going to lose her again. To distance. When the helicopter landed on the hospital's rooftop, he all but burst through the doors, coat still unzipped. A young nurse met him, leading him through long white hallways. The scent of antiseptic, the beep of overhead speakers. Everything slowed to a blur until the doors of the emergency room opened, and he saw Lena lying on a stretcher, face pale, lips dry, eyes barely open. "She woke up just a few minutes ago," the nurse said. "We're still waiting on the guardian signature for emergency delivery. The babies are unstable, and she may not make it." Damon stepped forward, nearly dropping to his knees beside her. "Lena?" She looked at him, eyes barely able to focus, as if she didn't believe he was really there. "I dreamed of you," she whispered, "that you wouldn't make it." "I'm here now," Damon said, voice shaking. "I'm here. I'm not leaving you again. Never again." A tear slid down her cheek. "I'm scared," she said. "Not for me. For the babies." He took her hand. "We'll get through this. All 4 of us. Do you hear me?" She nodded. Her lips moved slightly, as if offering forgiveness he didn't deserve. And in that moment, every wall, every hurt, every unanswered question disappeared. The OR doors opened. Doctors and nurses moved in, swiftly pushing Lena inside. Damon held her hand until the very last second. "Don't leave me," he said, as the heart monitor beeped steadily. "I can't do this without you." She squeezed his hand one last time, weakly, and the doors closed. 4 hours passed. Damon sat motionless outside the operating room, the hallway lights harsh and endless. His hand clutched the silver necklace Lena always wore. Then the doors swung open. A female doctor stepped out, pulling down her mask, eyes wet. 3 baby girls, premature, but they're breathing. We've placed them in neonatal care. Damon stood abruptly. "And their mother?" A long pause. "She lost a lot of blood," the doctor said quietly. "We almost lost her, but she made it." Damon collapsed into the chair behind him, burying his face in his hands. Tears streamed down, not from fear, but from the miracle he had just witnessed. An hour later, he was allowed into recovery. Lena lay there, pale, fragile, but alive. She turned her head slightly, eyes searching. 3 girls? He nodded, lowering his forehead to hers. You saved all 3, and you saved me too. She smiled, faintly, but real. The first smile he'd seen since the storm began. Outside, the blizzard still howled. But inside that quiet hospital room, between unhealed stitches and 3 newborn lives, something had been mended. Love, once torn to pieces, was now being stitched back together, thread by 2 people who had finally learned not to let go. Lena awoke to soft morning sunlight spilling through the hospital window, the first light after weeks of storm and darkness. She turned her head and saw Damon, asleep by the edge of her bed, head resting near her arm, hand still clutching hers like letting go might mean losing her all over again. With her weak fingers, she gently brushed his tousled hair. Damon stirred. The moment he saw her eyes open, he gripped her hand tighter, like she might vanish if he blinked. "You're okay," she whispered. "No," he shook his head, eyes wet. "You're not okay. You just walked through death's door, and I could barely do anything." "You came," she said softly. "That's everything." The days that followed were slow, healing ones. 3 tiny girls in incubators, and Damon mixing formula, changing diapers, giving each child a name with trembling awe. He cared for Lena like she was the center of the world, feeding her spoonfuls of broth, reading her to sleep, documenting every recovery milestone for both her and their daughters. There were no more board meetings, no news cycles, only a man who loved a woman enough to pause the world for her. One evening, when Lena was strong enough to sit in a wheelchair and watch the sunset from the hospital rooftop, Damon knelt beside her. No flowers, no diamonds, just a simple silver band he had shaped from his old necklace. "Not because you almost died," he said, voice deep. "Not because I feel guilty, but because you fought. For them, for us. And now I finally know what forever looks like. With you." "Lena Monroe, will you marry me?" She paused. The breeze caught her hair. In the golden light, her eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered, "this time, it's for both of us." And just like that, after storms, loss, separation, and heartbreak, they chose to begin again. With love, with trust, and with a promise to never let go again. Years had passed since that winter day, the day they nearly lost each other, then found their way back with what little was left in their hearts. Now Damon and Lena were husband and wife, no longer CEO and stylist, no longer 2 people from different worlds, but partners, side by side, co-leading Carlisle & Co. like a seamless team. The company had grown, not just in fashion, but into a creative center for children, where Lena built an art space dedicated to young girls with little access to beauty or design. Their 3 daughters, once tiny premature infants, had grown strong, each with a unique spark. One loved to paint, one danced endlessly. The youngest spent hours building mini cities. But all 3 knew one thing for certain. Love was something they saw every day, in the way their parents looked at each other. That afternoon, on the rooftop of Carlisle Tower, where it had all nearly ended, the family sat together on a long bench. New York buzzed in the distance, but here there was only wind, soft laughter, and fingers interlaced. "We did it," Lena whispered. "No," Damon smiled, glancing at their children. "We're doing it every day." No one can see the future, but sometimes the most beautiful thing isn't in the destination, it's in the journey. In the way 2 people found each other, forgave each other, and together created a masterpiece no artist could craft alone. A family.